Yeah, just let her know that that I sent you the email and that
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
already made the changes.
I just threw it, but I'll give it to you. Yeah.
Okay, the chair's going to call this meeting to order, so if you're wandering around, please have a seat. The workshop for September 24, 2019 is brought to order. We're going to begin with reports and presentations from the Audit Committee, and we have our distinguished Chair of the Audit Committee, Mary Foreman, here to bring us up to date. Thank you very much, Chair Foreman.
The audit committee's had 3 meetings since our last report. A couple of those meetings were related to the hiring of the in-house auditor and assisting in the selection of new audit committee members. And Dr. Hopes and I had interviews with 2 people for the audit committee. We had just incredibly qualified candidates. And both of those are on the agenda for this evening for your approval. And the in-house auditor, we had many resumes and interviewed 2 candidates and have recommended one for hire. And I understand she's been given the offer and has accepted. So that'll be on the board. For the board in a couple weeks. The committee had a lengthy discussion about the role of the Auditor General in relation with the Audit Committee. This year, as you know, the Auditor General is performing the federal and the financial audits. And the generally accepted accounting standards require that when an auditor comes in, that they have an entrance meeting with an audit committee, with they call it those charged in governance, which in your case, because you have an audit committee and this is a board according to auditing standards, the committee is charged with governance. And I was invited to a meeting with management and the Auditor General, and we had a meeting, and the board was concerned, or the committee was concerned that the entire committee was not invited. And I was told that they would not be meeting with the whole committee for the exit. And at the end of the audit, it's traditional, or it's required, that the communication be given about the findings in the audit and discuss, things for improvement. So, we want to ask that the board request these meetings. We want you to ask the Auditor General on our behalf to meet with the entire committee as soon as possible in the form of an entrance committee meeting, and then at the end for an exit. And initially we were going to draft the letter ourselves, and then we were told by Mr. Dye that no, the request has to come from you all. So that is our request to you. Then at the meeting we also had Don Sauer presented the action plans related to the homeschool transfer report that was adopted at the prior meeting. And things are underway there. They've made some significant changes to processes and procedures and personnel. And we're hopeful when we do when we have the post-audit review by Carriggs and Ingram in December, that will prove that things are working well in that area. We had an update from the information technology, and in the last report we had received from them was 3 months ago, and at that time everything was either red or yellow, and it was pretty dismal. Things weren't really progressing. But since then, and in part because the board approved and hired a number of individuals in the IT department, things have progressed, and they are all green, some shade of green. IT will never be 100% green. We can close the door and go home, as they tackle one thing, they discover other things, but they're being addressed, and it's all very encouraging. Then Carr, Riggs and Ingram reported to us they are currently performing the payroll and human resources and construction audits. In the payroll audit, they are right now, or at that time, they were emphasis was on the employees who were overpaid. And we expect to have a report on that and tying in HR in our December meeting. And they will begin the process of testing the post-audit reviews. They got quite a few to go through. And they'll start on that in November, December area. And we're back to time for the sales surtax review, the June 30th, 2019 period. And the committee, once again, we've had discussion on this before, and want to align what we're doing with the instructions to our committee that were included in Board Resolution 2016-10. And I gave you all a copy of that resolution. The concern is whose report is this? Who should be issuing a report? And last year, we had Carr, Riggs and Ingram prepared the report just as they do on any other audit report. And the audit committee approved it and recommended it to the board. And we want to continue with that, but we want your confirmation that that is in conformity with what you want under 2016-10. One of our committee members is very adamant that the report should be coming from us and from the audit committee. In other words, you know, we hire Carr, Riggs and Ingram, and then we prepare the report and submit it. And we're not. The rest of the committee is not happy with that. So we discussed it and said we'll bring it to you all, and you all take a look at it and see if see if that's acceptable to you. And then we also had some additional housekeeping items that we talked about. They're in my audit audit committee report to you about charter schools being reported in the CAFR and communications among the audit committee. And we will be having, we've already scheduled 2 meetings coming up because we've got a lot to do. October 10th will be our next meeting, and then we will be meeting again December 9th. So.
Okay, Board or Vice Chair Messenger?
I have a couple questions. In the report that you just, I don't want to say read from because you didn't read from it, but you were referencing, I should say. You mentioned, I want to go back to the Auditor General and having the committee, the entire committee sit with the Auditor General before and after. Has that happened in the past with the Audit Committee?
We had an exit meeting with them the last time they did a financial audit, and
The entire committee?
the entire committee.
Okay.
And I was told by the person from the Auditor General's office that that wouldn't be happening this year. You know, that she knows that's what we want, but
Did they give a reasoning why?
they say they just don't do it. There's an argument to be made that a meeting with the chair of the audit committee being there would meet their requirements to communicate. And in your case, you've got 7 really qualified people, and just having one of us there, I think you're being shortchanged. You know, the committee feels that it's much stronger that we all participate in that.
When it was public, or when it was done in the past, was it a public meeting then?
Yes. And they are public meetings.
They are public meetings no matter what anyway.
If the whole audit committee is there.
Right, okay, so if it's not a public meeting, if you're just there,
Right.
okay. Let me go back to the other recommendation, the other request you had. When it comes to the sales tax. I'm not sure I was a member of the board when that decision was made, because that was probably made prior to the sales tax vote. So I'm not sure what the desire of the board was at the time on that, but maybe the two fellas over there have more remembrance of what happened, or we can look at the tapes or whatever, but if I mean, that isn't to say everything's taped.
The board chair would be happy to share the blame with you, so, just kidding on that. I think it was a great thing.
No, I think it's a good thing, but I understand the confusion of the meaning, because if you look at the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee, and they really don't have your skill set, and they do kind of determine whether the millage is being spent properly without an outside audit. So I don't know if the intention of the board at the time was, since that your committee has that skill set, whether the intention was that they would perform the same kind of functions that now the finance committee is performing for the millage. I'm not really sure, because I wasn't there. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
This is a little off the cuff, but it seems like there is explicit language in the referendum about the proceeds of the sales tax reviewable by the audit committee. And please don't hesitate to say I'm wrong, but that's my recollection. And that's why the sales tax has the benefit of this audit committee to look at it. Now, I'm looking at the superintendent to see if that's consistent.
My understanding.
Okay. It was very explicit language, and it said audit committee.
So my understanding of what you're saying is that whatever the documents are that are being reviewed by CRI, you believe that should be reviewed by the audit committee based on the language?
Yes, and having the expertise of CRI involved with it, I think can be considered, to be, part of the audit committee function.
Okay, I think that they're asking for clarity on things. We should just make sure they have the clarity they need one way or another.
I'm wondering if Mary has some, problems with my interpretation there.
Possibly a disagreement with the methodology that you're proposing there. You don't want us, we don't want to be down and dirty doing the audit, doing any audit testing and reviewing. We review the work as it's presented to CRI. Okay, they're not handing us invoices. They're not, we are going through the report that they have prepared. And the opinions expressed in that report are the opinions of CRI, not the audit committee. And then the audit committee, based on oversight of the process, review of the report, discussions, we eventually agree to recommend the report. Okay, that's what how the process worked last year, and that's also part of why it took so long. It took us a long time to get through it. It was the first time. There was disagreement on some issues. Additional testing was done. It was a long process. I think it'll go quicker this year. But that being said, most of the audit committee does not want to be in a position where we are expressing an opinion on that revenues were what they're supposed to be, that expenses are what they're supposed to be. That is a opinion given by Carr, Riggs, and Ingram, and when we presented it last time, we said we concur with their findings, and we want confirmation from you all that that's acceptable.
I don't see any disagreement. And I think that's a very reasonable interpretation. I don't think that the public, you know, envisioned at all that Mary Foreman and her cohorts, you know, were going to go out and examine every receipt and every check and all of that. But they would, you know, have some kind of review, I think to the extent that they would concur with finding of a, you know, outside auditor. Okay, that's, I'm just specimen. Board Member Golden.
Do we not also come to the audit committee to get recommendations as to who the outside auditor will be?
Yes, and we've done that for, well, the outside internal auditor. There are two types of auditors outside. The external auditor who does the annual financial audit, the audit of the internal accounts, that is more Stevens and Lovelace. And then the external internal auditor, thank you.
Contracted internal auditor.
Thank you, okay. Who is CRI. And we've just went through that process of selecting CRI.
Okay, so I just want to be clear that the audit, the contract external audit that prepares the audit committee, or that prepares the audit that the audit committee reviews, is the contract auditor that the audit committee has selected or recommended be selected.
Yes,
Okay, so it's not like you are being called upon to recommend somebody's work that you've had no relationship with whatsoever or no involvement with in selecting.
that's
Okay,
correct.
what you're asking us to do is to simply say, yeah, that's all right.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Board Member Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Foreman, I'd like to address a couple of issues. One is that because this is the year where the Auditor General conducts our financial audit, and as you're aware, the state is getting much more direct. The expectations, the demands of agency boards has been elevated by the legislature and the executive branch of government. I appreciate getting the emails related to the audit committee wanting to meet as a body with the Auditor General at the initiation of the financial audit. But these audits are supposed to be, you know, sort of like arm's length. And it is appropriate, and I'm assuming the chair of the audit committee and the superintendent and the CFO met with the Auditor General at the outset. And so one part of me is wondering, is there anything the audit committee wants to communicate to the Auditor General? And as you know, with your experience, these audits are pretty straightforward. I mean, they're looking at accounts and they're doing a financial audit and it's independent, and they're really reviewing our agency and issuing a public report or an audit, about our organization that these four members govern. And so I can understand from their workload perspective not wanting to be biased by the board's own audit committee, moving into the audit. So the question is there something that our audit committee, the audit committee is there to provide benefit to this board? Is there something that the audit committee is compelled to communicate with us or communicate with the Auditor General, where they have to do it in a group, in a public setting? I was trying to figure out why the request for the entire audit committee to have a pre-audit and post-audit meeting with the Auditor General. I understand the engagement when the financial auditor that we contract with is doing it, but there's a reason why the state has a cycle of coming in and doing that financial audit. And that's because of the independence and the sort of separation from the board and from the audit committee. That's why they have a cycle where the state auditor general does the audits as opposed to the person, the entity that we contract to do the audits.
Well, they state that they're doing the audit in conformity with generally accepted auditing standards, okay? And that's why I provided you all, I'm sure you read it, it was so exciting, but 20-some odd pages of that standard. And so they're not immune from that. They still have to follow auditing statutes, or regulations. And as far as the independence goes, all auditors doing the financial audits have to be independent. So MSL is independent. They, when we have meetings with them, with the whole group, it is not uncommon for them to say, here's what we're going to look at, and then somebody on the committee says, have you thought of this? Are you going to do additional testing on this? And it just makes it a stronger audit for the district.
But would you agree that the state auditor general is empowered and has the rights and authority to come into any agency in the state and do whatever kind of audit they want to, regardless?
Absolutely.
And so I think,
Of course.
I
But
think,
if they're going to issue a report,
but I think, if you reached out to the auditor general or the Tampa, office of the auditor general, and they said that's not going to happen, I mean, they pretty much are saying that, no, we're not going to do that. And so I'm trying to wonder why the audit committee feels so strongly that this board should go to the auditor general's office and say, we want you to meet with our audit committee. It's not, to me, knowing the power they have with the stroke of their pen and what they put in their report, I'm just trying to figure out what the motivation is.
we are tasked with oversight of the audit. And,
I don't think the auditor general's
No,
audit.
no, okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll put that a different way.
I think last year, with regards to our contracted financial auditor, we did task you with that. I don't think we have the authority to task you with oversight of the state auditor general's audit. Now, to help us understand their audit findings, but I don't think we're empowered to task you to oversee the state auditor general.
Okay, would you be willing to request that the exit meeting be with the entire audit committee?
I think I would want to know, because as you may or may not know, the process is that they have that meeting with the chair, with, I think, the audit committee chair and the superintendent and the CFO to go over verbally
Right.
their preliminary findings, to give us collectively behind closed doors the opportunity to address their verbal communication to us before it goes into a final report. And there's value for both the agency, there's value in this board, and there's value in the administration to have the opportunity to work through probable or possible findings before they're put into writing. Because once that report is put into writing, that is a reflection of this board's governance over the agency we were elected to govern. And so I would not want to answer that question until I heard what their concerns are upon the conclusion of their audit, before they immortalize their findings into a document that is saved by the state for decades. And so that's why my question was, is there something that we need to be aware of, that perhaps the audit committee needs to have a discussion with each of us individually that is motivating the audit committee to request that level of engagement with the Auditor General? Or is this just because it's the role, has been the role of the audit committee when our contracted financial auditor has been doing the audit?
As far as, is there something specific? No, we do not have, yeah, you can
Okay.
rest assured on that. And it's not just because our MSL, we typically did that, it's because it's, the committee feels that one person representing the committee at these meetings is not the best. Okay.
I'm personally comfortable with the chair that's been selected by the audit committee to represent the audit committee in those meetings which are not intended to be public meetings with government officials.
I think that's an excellent point about the public meeting.
Yeah, because quite frankly, you know, once that audit is put into its final form, it is an audit of this board's agency. And so, I mean, as you all know, I take it very seriously. And just, you know, and also I don't want to raise the ire of the government entity that's going to be reviewing our agency. Yes, former chair.
First of all, the committee's discussion had nothing to say that would be negative about Ms. Foreman being our chair. That's not it. And you do raise a good point, that if we were to, if the entire committee meets with the Auditor General, it is a public meeting, and it is critical that the Auditor General have an opportunity to have a non-public meeting to discuss the findings before they are finalized. That has been the pattern we have followed with the Auditor General. The last time they were here, they met, there was a private meeting, and then they met with the Audit Committee. From the Audit Committee's perspective, at least from my perspective as a member of that committee, it's more, I think, important for us in terms of what those findings are, how those findings follow up on previous years, because they have to go back and look at that, and it gives us much more information, because we are charged by you with making sure that those findings are at some point addressed, or at least bringing to you concerns that they are not. And it gives the committee an opportunity then to have a conversation, which is public, with the Auditor General about the work they have done, the specifics of their particular findings, and if there's some other nuance in there that perhaps in the report is not obvious, but we can actually dig through and say, oh, that's similar to when you did the operational audit, or this has changed since that point. So it just gives us more information. I think that's more.
So my suggestion on process is that I don't believe we should try to compel the Auditor General to meet with the entire audit committee pre-audit. I think dependent on the verbal report at the end of the audit, where the audit committee chair will be present, the board chair will be present, the superintendent, the CFO, I think that's the time that we discuss whether or not there's benefit to the board for the audit committee to weigh in prior to the audit being finalized and published. But certainly, once the audit is complete, should there be findings that we as a board would like the audit committee to help us better understand how we got there, what the course to cure whatever deficiencies may be found, then that would be appropriate. That's the reason why I'm hesitant to commit today, because I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, I really think it's intended to quite frankly, I mean, they're evaluating the agency. I mean, it is an assessment on this board's governance of this agency. And so, if that's okay, I'd like to move on to the second issue I had in your report, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, proceed.
I very much appreciate the process with regards to the new audit committee members, which you're bringing to us. There were a number of applicants, very qualified applicants. You and I met with a couple of the recommended finalists. And I'm going to preface this. I've seen the CV, the resume of the candidate for our employee internal auditor. But as you may be aware in statutes, this board, as large as this agency is, we're very limited on the positions that we are able to employ. A superintendent, an internal auditor, and a general counsel. I mean, that's pretty much it. And as you're aware from the outset of my service on this board, and even prior to coming on the board, I made it clear that I felt that the board needed to be transitioning some of the internal audit functions into our own, board employ. And like I said, the resume of the individual that you're recommending, and now it looks like we're approving the employment, looks pretty darn good on paper. I don't know that I've ever met the person, and I don't know if anybody else on the board has met the person. I don't know who else applied for the job. I have confidence in the audit committee and their selection. Like I said, I was just a little bit surprised that we're hiring somebody that there are only 5 of us, and this is next to the superintendent. This is the first time this board is employing a person of in this capacity. And so I'm trying to figure this out. And then when I asked the superintendent, do we have a plan for where this person is going to work, where their office is going to be, what the reporting relationship's going to be? It just seems like the audit committee, because this is supposed to be our hire. This is not supposed to be the superintendent's hire. This is this board, the 5 of us, hiring this one employee that is going to be our eyes and ears into this agency. And I'd like to know how we got all the way to offering a position to somebody and they've accepted, and I don't even know what the person looks like.
Very fair point. We were following what was set forth in the charter. Okay, now granted it's a draft, but there were many discussions, about that the audit committee would review and recommend. Okay, so we took that on. The interviews were public. Okay,
Let me stop you right there. Review and recommend. It's my understanding we made a job offer and the person accepted it. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Secondly, the meetings were public. Okay, and I checked with Michelle, and they were on the board calendar. Okay, so you all were aware that they were going on.
I checked my emails and I didn't see a list of candidates. I mean, I understand the public meetings,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you got copies of the resumes as they came in. There were,
not that I have, not according to my emails, but
there were probably all told about 20, and
I mean, I was aware that there was like a first round, and then it was like re-advertised, but I'm talking about that in a very short period of time, I found out that we had somebody. I saw a resume, they were offered a position, they accepted the position, and now we're going to approve it tonight. And granted, on paper, it's a very competent person.
you're not doing it tonight.
Okay.
And my understanding is she's not on the agenda.
Okay.
Because that will be your hire or your.
So again, who on the board, has anyone on this board met with this person?
No.
Okay. Mr. Chairman,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you. I just want to approach this, just I guess from a little bit different perspective. Dr. Hopes, these are all good points. The way that I was looking at this coming in, or looking at the process, was that this was not a hire of the board, although the board made the request of this position, which will be under the superintendent.
oh, no,
But
understand.
let me finish. Let me finish, guys. But on the org chart, this position works for the superintendent, not for the board, because as you already said, we can't hire anyone.
No, we can. This is the only person we can hire. That's the problem. It's not somebody to report to the superintendent. This is our first position who is independent of the entire organization. That's what an internal auditor is.
But this is not our internal auditor. This is an employee of the district.
Oh, no, this is.
Who will report-
No, that's not so. But I'll leave it up to the chairman to decide who talks. But no, this is our first transitional employee to function in the internal auditor capacity.
Okay, okay, I'm glad we're talking about this because my perception was wrong.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think even with that though, I think that, and this is a good point, like, the board has not interviewed anybody, although I wouldn't feel, I wanted this process to be in the hands of the audit committee, not the board. I mean, like I said, it's a good
Well,
point.
normally you would have 3 candidates or something like that and look at it. And like I said, I have no criticism of this person's credentials. I mean, at all. This is not about the individual. I just wanted to make sure we all understand how important this hire is. And all of a sudden, we've gone from really a great position of defining the position, getting qualified applicants, and narrowing down the selection. But we've got work to do with regards, because this is not somebody that's reporting to the superintendent or anybody that works for the superintendent. This is our one of only 3 positions we can hire.
Okay,
Can I ask one question? Super quick follow-up question, if I may.
okay, go ahead.
So, as you said, we can only hire the superintendent, an attorney, and an internal audit. So, but this individual who's been brought forward, or will be brought forward, excuse me, doesn't replace CRI. Like, I'm just wondering in the org structure, how does this fit in? And I'm glad we're talking about this because my.
Okay, the chair will express.
That's all I had. That's.
Okay, this board, over the last year at least, had discussions about functions of our outside internal auditor, CRI, that there were many functions that they were doing that did not require, CRI's expertise. And I think there was a feeling that it would be more efficient use of tax money if there were auditing functions done by an in-house internal auditor. Now, there's no statutory or policy prevention against our having an in-house internal auditor. Now, internal auditor reports to the board. I agree with Mr. Hopes. This is an employee of the board, reports to the board. Can consult with the auditing committee, but reports to the board, along with CRI, who has a lot of employees, and the audit committee. And we have an external, auditor. They report to the board. The auditors report to the board. Now, I guess that, I don't think there was ever any suggestion that, otherwise. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I remember it well, because I remember a couple years ago, I brought this idea up, and I was told by a couple people on the dais, who are no longer here, that this was illegal and we can't do it, and then we found out later that we can, and here we are, and I'm glad we got to this point.
Yeah.
But you just said right there, Mr. Meyer, and I guess this is my confusion, is that this employee will report to CRI, and then will report to us?
No.
So I misheard you, that's why.
No.
Don't get mad, I'm just asking for clarification.
Reports to the board, period.
Just like CRI reports directly to the board. So we're gonna have a firm reporting to the board and an individual separate from CRI reporting to the board.
Okay, now, it's going to be working with CRI. And I think that was,
That's all I'm trying to flesh out.
I think the Vice Chair Messenger was saying, yeah, okay, you got CRI involved here. CRI has some tasks, and maybe I'm wrong and I overstated, and I'm being corrected by the Vice Chair Messenger. But they're responsible, to us, but we'll be working in conjunction with CRI. am I misinterpreting this? Okay, board member or vice chair messengers, correct me.
The only reason why I'm shaking my head is I have the job description that we approved. I
Right.
can't find the date of when we approved it, because it's not showing up here. But, I do have the job description, and it says reports to. It says the school board, direct reporting relationship. And it also says that reports to the audit committee. That is a job, this is the job description that we approved. I cannot find, like I said, I can't find the date, but I wanted to point out that it's not period. It's not school board, period. It says reports to school board, which is direct. And it says reports to the audit committee, which is matrix reporting relationship.
Okay,
So I just wanted to make sure it was not period. That is not what it says in the job description that we approved.
I appreciate the vice chair pointing that out, bringing it to our attention.
Can't find the date.
The,
Mr. Chairman?
yeah, okay, board member Hopes.
And the statutes provides that the internal auditor may report, that shall report to the board and/or their designee. We have that flexibility. And in our job description, we talked about the role of the audit committee with this individual as well as CRI. And just real short, you know, one of the things, Mr. Kennedy, is and I think you were in some of these meetings, is that there are a number of tasks with regards to gathering the information from the administration and things like that to provide to the audit committee, to provide to the internal auditor, that could be much more effectively and efficiently provided by an internal person. Right. Well, and it's also transition so that we can work towards a larger, you know, internal audit function reporting to the board. But the vice chair is correct. It's not definitive. It's our we have the jurisdiction to designate how that reporting relationship works. But that's where I just wanted to, because I think we probably want to meet with this person. I mean,
I
Okay.
appreciate what you're saying, and I do want to point out that I checked. I don't know how your communications work, but I understand there's a newsletter that goes out to the board, and it was on that.
that was my news.
Okay, and that I mean that these interviews were being held, and also it was on the calendar, and I was surprised that there was no board member there. But you know,
I think an
I
important part of this.
apologize for not specifically sending out an email to each of you.
I think an important part of this discussion is this in-house internal auditor does not report to the superintendent
Right.
or superintendent staff. You know, through CRI or maybe the audit committee, but it's still ultimately, it's the board. Okay, it's an employee of the board, selected by the board, subject to our maybe terminating them or what. Okay. Board member Golden.
I'm being new. I don't quite understand how we are at this point, but I thought that we had previously created a job description that called for the hiring of an internal auditor who would report, as the vice chair has pointed out, to the board and to the audit committee. And as we are aware, the five of us here, we don't have any vetting process for this job. This is a new job. And I think it's fair to say that it was not unrealistic to expect that just as you do the vetting and the interviewing and all of that for the external, internal, however that is with CRI.
Employed internal auditor.
Yeah, okay. That we receive the same service from you. Now, it would also be fair to say that the audit committee doesn't have a HR component. And so I think that the idea of them being hired or them being recommended to be hired and put on our agenda brings us to this point. Are we saying that we have buyer's remorse at the way we got to someone who's going to serve? Or are we saying that we didn't really like the process, even though we didn't really give any specific directions as to how to go about doing this, other than that we wanted internal auditor and having you to interview them and do, I mean, what are we, what is the angst that we are experiencing now, since this person, I thought what I read was that we were trying to get them on board by the 1st, which is obviously not going to happen now because it's not on the agenda tonight. So what is the angst that we are experiencing? Are there other people that we want to have considered? Do we want to now inject ourselves into the review process for the hiring? Because one of the things that I thought was tantamount in terms of trying to get an internal auditor was to have that person interviewed by people who do that. You see, me telling you that this person would be a good auditor won't mean very much, because I've never audited anything. I don't even know what CPA spells.
SEPA.
Yeah, SEPA, yeah. And I'm serious. We get all tangled up and tied up in knots at what we have not been asked to do. And the reality is that the people that have done it are more qualified. Is anybody got a CPA? I know I don't. So I'm content with the process that has brought us to this person, unless we find out that they have a criminal record or something like that, which I'm sure you all did. You all vetted and figured out all of that when you interviewed. I'm just that's why I haven't really said much. I'm just trying to figure out why we are all excited now that we're on the eve of hiring someone that we've been trying to hire for the last several months.
Okay, well stated, Board Member Golden. I think Board Member Hopes, have some remarks, then we'll have
Yeah,
Superintendent.
the point, I think I made the point. I
Yeah.
mean, I read in the superintendent's newsletter, whatever. I mean, when the board hires somebody or makes an offer, it should be with the awareness of the board. It should not be, coming out in a newsletter or a correspondence from the superintendent that we've made a job offer to somebody and they've accepted it. That was the point. Not anything, look, I did work with Ernst & Winning, Ernst & Young, and so did this candidate, and like her background and everything. That has nothing to do with it. It's just that, moving forward, when the board is hiring a position, the board should be aware that we're making an offer to somebody and what that offer is, because I don't know how an offer was made when none of us signed off on what the offer was. I mean, it seems to me that maybe somebody within the district, unless the audit committee gave a job offer, which as they don't have an HR department, the audit committee can't hire anybody. And so that was it. It was more just kind of like in the process, we're all in this together, but I just want to make sure the audit committee is not independent of the board. And when the board is hiring one of its only 3 employees that it can hire, I expect the board to know as an entire body and agree that we're making an offer to hire somebody before an offer letter goes out to them. I mean, I wouldn't want a citizens panel to make a job offer to hire a superintendent without us knowing who we're hiring as a superintendent. I mean, that's the point. That's the point I wanted to make. I think I've made it, and I'm confident that our partners on the audit committee will arrange for us to get to know this person.
Well
Thank you.
stated, Board Member Hope. Okay, Superintendent Saunders.
Dr. Herbst, you made a lot of valid points, and probably because this is very new. Now, we've kind of talked about the logistics, but we've not finalized. But what I would suggest is maybe at our next board workshop, we have the candidate here for all the board to meet at one time so that you can ask questions. I don't think there's any doubt that the committee has picked a viable, qualified candidate. So, but that way you're all able to meet the person. And all the logistics, we can give some suggestions of where their office will be. We've talked about that briefly. We weren't going to put them on the finance floor or the 5th floor. We were gonna put them in an office that did give some separation, because we are mindful of their duties are gonna be a little different. But maybe in the workshop, and prior to that, we will definitely work with Ms. Foreman, the chair, and come up with the logistics of the points that you just spoke. Where will their office be? Make it very clear that everybody understands their functionality. They will be auditing, so they'll be working with the district staff, but they're not part of the district staff. So we'll get together to make sure that the audit committee feels comfortable also we're the office and it meets the objective of that separation so that we can have all that. And honestly, I should have called that. I probably should have suggested that. We didn't think about it, but all the points you said are very valid. So I'll suggest we'll put that on the next board workshop. We will have met prior to that, have a lot of things kind of vetted and thought about, and we'll present it to the board with the candidate here as well so that you can meet, speak, ask questions, so that we'll have all that tied up before it goes on for voting for board approval.
And she's an excellent candidate, and I appreciate the work. I mean,
Yep, all very clear.
No, I agree, and I
mean,
will.
superb.
When we look at at the charter and policies, when we update that, we will, make revisions to factor this in, because you will have more hires. I think eventually you will have more internal auditors, so.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Great job. Okay. Okay, the next item on our workshop, and it's 3 o'clock, we're going to review Board Policy 2125, School Advisory Councils. Okay, I'm sorry, public comment. Thank you for correcting me. Vice Chair Messenger is in charge of public comment at this point, and so please proceed.
Right. There's 4 people that have signed up, and all 4 of those people, I think, know the rules, so I don't think I need to read the rules. First up is Rodney Jones. I didn't see him, but I thought I'd say his name. Rodney Jones, are you out there? Okay. Mrs. Mendel, come on down. After Mrs. Mendel, Miss Rhodes. The agenda was set, and we're gonna follow the agenda as it is set up. Public comment is now for the workshop. You can always come back this afternoon, and the evening board meeting, and make another public comment afterwards. No, I'm saying you could do both. Okay, great. Come on down, Mrs. Mendel.
Hi, thanks. SACs across the county will be forever changed if Board Policy 2125 is not overturned. Here's what happened at the very first SAC meeting at Braden River High School. First 5 parents who raised their hands were made voting members of SAC. The rest of the parents were told that they were not needed because the law would be changed. Bylaws would be changed per district policy and statute. SACs would have 5 voting board employees and 5 voting parents. The non-voting members were welcome to stay and observe, but they no longer had a vote. Leadership was voted in and the bylaws were changed. This also happened at Braden River Elementary, Witt, Willis, McNeil, Hale, and multiple other schools by parents that probably didn't even know that they voted to silence themselves. They were tricked. They were told that this was a non-negotiable and that they had been out of compliance and a violation of board policy and law for 2 years, so they had better not question it. They were told that principals will appoint any additional parents as necessary. That was not democracy. That was not the intended spirit of the law. Parents were stripped of a voice and a vote because of an overreach by district admin and a board that didn't even realize that they voted this policy in 2 years ago. I made calls all over Tallahassee and was told that this was a violation of statute. I also called the FSBA, who were speechless. I talked to Mr. Dye, who also agreed that this was not okay. I asked that this board please vote to remove this harmful policy, and I would ask that you put it in writing and you report it out at the next principals meeting so that all SACs will remove the amendment and in the bylaws. I ask that a PR campaign be started by the district and our principals to advertise and invite as many as parents as possible to the next SAC meeting. An all call would be a wonderful way to welcome families into our schools and remind them that their voice and their vote does matter. This can be addressed at the SAC chair meeting on October 23rd at MTC. I look forward to attending the meeting to make sure that our SAC leadership knows that SAC is not some kind of an exclusive club, but rather a representative body of our school. Lakewood Ranch has 2,459 students. 5 voting parents make up 0.2% of that population. Is this an appropriately balanced number of parents to represent the community? Does it represent the racial, ethnic, and economic diversity of our community? The statute says principals may appoint, not will appoint members to achieve the appropriate representation. You let the parents vote in the representation. This is not an opportunity for principals to cherry pick the parents that they know will vote in their favor. 2 quotes. There are only 2 keys to educational success: hard work and parent involvement. That's from Michael Ferris, president of the Homeschool Legal Defense Fund. And last is, behind the child that makes the most progress is an actively involved parent. Please don't take our voice and our vote. Thank you.
Miss Rhodes, come on down. And after Miss Rhodes is Miss Woodson.
I see now, which I knew all along, some board members up here like to throw their weight around. Now, July the 23rd, you all took our school LMA over in Palmetto, and I'm here listening at this audit committee and everything. You all should have did the same thing you did for us. We wasn't on the agenda, but y'all put us on the agenda, so you should have did that for your new hire. Now, we're not going away. We don't care which way the wind blow. We're going to fight this all the way if we have to take it up to Washington, D.C., because what was done, you all did wrong for LMA. It's not about Mr. Hunley, and I don't care if some of you guys up here do not like Mr. Hunley. It's about the kids there. No time have any of you all came over there since y'all had to take over to see how the kids are doing. The kids are very upset over there because they were looking for the same thing happened last year when we first was a charter school. Now, I have a little problem with some of you all, but I'm not going to say it. I just wait till that time come that we have to go to court with it. But you all need to think about it. Now, LMA is on your agenda, and I don't know why it's on the agenda, because the hearing is not posted until September 3rd to see whether we won or you all won. And I am one of the leaders of the LMA task force, and that's what we are. And I'm going to fight it. That is the only school in our neighborhood, and I graduated from in 1967. And all my kids went through there, all my nieces and all my sisters and everything, till they went over to Manatee High School. And you're not going to take that away from us. I don't care if you need a flyover, if y'all need billions of dollars for that, you're not going to take it like that. We are a school. We are LMA. And I'm glad that they did change it to LMA. Yes, I did volunteer when it was a middle school, and I do volunteer, but I haven't been out there because I didn't like the way you all took it. And then how you all could just sit here and just say things like that. Some of y'all just don't like Mr. Hunley because he is a smart man. And that's why you all took it out. But y'all took it out on the kids. Y'all did. Y'all took it out really on the kids who was there at LMA. I haven't seen none of you all at that school. I volunteer. Only person I ever saw coming in there was Mr. Kennedy. When they have an activity, graduation, everything, that's the only one. None of you board members have been out there. But when the school was taken over, you came out there to say this and that to us. But we're not going away. We're not. We stand right here, and we're going to fight for our school. And I don't care if you be mad at me, because I'm myself. I'm just like my brother. He a fighter. He gone, but I'm just like, thank you.
Miss Woodson? I don't think I saw her, but. Miss Woodson? Oh, come on down.
Good evening.
Miss Jo.
My name is Margie G. Woodson, and I've been here before and maybe many times more. But today I come with a question. That's all I have is a question. I was in a board meeting some weeks back, and I did hear School Board Member Golden say that when we come before you and ask or present, that you can answer if you want to. So I'm hoping that today you might want to answer my question. I noticed that when we come to the school board meetings now at 5:45 in the evening, we have to go through a metal detector type thing, and our wallets, our purses have to be checked. And then if it's full in here, there's no overflow room available, and we can't all get in for the school board meetings. So I want to know, why did that happen? Because it wasn't that way until a few weeks ago. We used to be able to come in and stand around the walls if we needed to and ask questions, but now we can't. So did something happen, or why was that done? Was it done from the school board or police department, or how? Why did that happen? Because the last time I came, I was told I couldn't come in because it was full, and I had to go sit in my car and wait, and then if a seat became available, someone would come knock on my window, and that hadn't happened before. And I'm just curious, that's all. And I am from Lincoln Memorial High School. I graduated in the class, the last greatest class that Lincoln had. I was a member of that class of 1969. And so I'm concerned about the school staying in our community. I'm really concerned about that. But I just wanted to know, why was it changed? That's all.
We can talk after the workshop.
Okay. I just want to know, that's all, because I don't want to come and then have to go sit in my car. So just asking.
Thank you. Okay, that is all I have signed up for today.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Messenger. On the workshop, the review of Board Policy 2125, School Advisory Council, and is up.
Chairman Minor, board members, and Superintendent Saunders, you are receiving a handout of information. The first is your current policy, our current policy for the school district of Manatee County. The actual language in policy 2125 that outlines the specifics of school advisory councils for school improvement and accountability. The information that is in question and commented upon by during public comment just a moment ago is in the first paragraph towards the end. It indicates after parens 1, there's a period there, and the sentence begins, the council will be limited to 10 voting members. The principal is responsible for providing that the elections take place and the composition of the School Advisory Council, SAC, complies with the law. If the election process does not yield a SAC that reflects the racial, ethnic, and economic diversity of the student population at the school, the principal may appoint additional members to achieve the appropriate representation. Behind that, you will see the reference to the Florida statute and the state board rule. Sections 1001.42 and sections 1001.452 of Florida statute focus on the powers and duties of district school board as well as the district and school advisory councils. There is not a limit to the number of members that are to be seated on a school advisory council. And it is the pleasure of this board to review the documentation and revise the policy as appropriate. And I would be glad to entertain questions at this time, as would Ms. Saunders, I believe. This is going back as far as 2015, the information that was researched. And the language was placed in there without much documentation as to why, other than the board, what it was recommended to the board because some of the committees had become very, very large. That is basically the only documentation that can be identified at this time to support this language.
Okay, Vice Chair and Messenger.
Is it possible for a SAC to limit itself? Can they, in their own bylaws, say we only want 20 people?
They have rights and responsibilities according to the Florida statute. It does not specifically indicate that they have an opportunity to limit the number of participants, but they must be voted on by the group. So they could approve 15 or 25 as individuals become available. Some schools have a large number of individuals who want to serve on a SAC committee. Others have very few.
Right.
So the size is going to vary from school to school.
Sure. And I, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead, please.
I spoke to somebody that, is on a SAC and is also a member of the parent task force and asked their opinion of this. And, they kind of went through the same pros and cons that I can see how, a smaller SAC would make the meeting probably more efficient. And I can see that, certainly. But, then that person pointed out that even if they weren't a member of the SAC, they would still attend the meetings. It wouldn't change any of that for them. And I think that's true for a lot of people, that they would still attend whether they were a member or not. But I guess that was my main question, is can they limit themselves? Because maybe this isn't our place to do this. But if it's not our place, I do think that the SAC should be allowed to do that themselves if they wanted to say, we only want 15, or because you're right, if a school has 50, that's very hard to function. You may not reach quorum. You may not be able to record the votes. There could be a lot of issues if it gets too big. I could see that. But we approved this. I think we approved this when we were trying to work through a mountain of policies to get
Revisions.
Compliant, we were.
Compliant, I think, but and I asked too, where did this come from? And I don't think there's a real clear answer, because it didn't come from Neola, which is what is so interesting about it. Is I'd love to know who put that in there, because we at the time were reading mountains and mountains of policies in order to become compliant. And that was, I think you were chair at the time, having to get that barge down the narrow river. That was it. No, but that's how it felt at the time. There was a lot that we were reading at the time, and lots of policies that we were looking through and discussing, coming in with lots of pages and pages of notes. And so I think, this, to me, I would be in favor of removing those sentences that you read. Only because it seems to me that if you're saying they vote on their own members, their own membership, that they could easily limit their membership if they would like to do that. And I don't necessarily think that this is our place to do that. So I would be in favor of removing those 3 sentences that she read, which did not come from Neola. Those 3 sentences, we are not sure where they came from. And I would have been in favor if the parent task force had created that, but it doesn't seem like that's even where it came from.
There isn't any documentation to support
know,
that
yeah.
was the source, yes, ma'am.
So for me, I think the cons of this outweighs the limited pros of this language.
Okay, Board Member Golden. And I have a request. The superintendent was kind enough to send out a copy of the Florida statute concerning this. I thank her for that. I don't have it with my papers right now. What?
It's in here.
Okay,
Second page.
second page. I don't know, maybe I'm missing page 2.
That's just.
That's it.
Second page, that's it. The second page.
Right on your top of your stack. No, no, no.
Yeah, it's big.
You just covered it up.
I just covered it up.
These are the statutes that they were talking about.
This is not the whole statute.
No, you're right, Mr. Chair. It's not the whole statute.
Can we be provided, printed out and provide everybody the whole statute, please?
The part that I remember, am I
Okay.
permitted to speak now?
Okay, yeah, while they're doing that, please go ahead.
The part that I remember is that there were not only provisions with respect to school advisory councils, but there's also a provision of the statute with respect to a district advisory council. And the notion of limiting the number of voting members to 10, however that came about, obviously is a bad idea. But I do think that we still need to be able to allow principals to achieve SACs that reflect, as it says in here, the racial, ethnic, and economic diversity of the student population at the school. And we can get that by simply removing the first sentence, that the SAC council shall be determined by the SAC itself. And I think that that covers the question of minimum 10 or maximum 100, and it allows the flexibility in the school to do the work of the SAC to reflect the racial, ethnic, and economic diversity. So I agree 100% that the council should not be limited to 10. In fact, the council should be composed of a number determined by the school. Because you've got one school with 2,400, I think, Lakewood Ranch. Then you've got 290-something out there in Mayaca City, and both of them being limited to 10 doesn't help the district. Because if they all got together and had a district SAC meeting, then you'd have 3,200 or 3,300 kids represented by 20 people, by 10 people, no, 20 people. And that,
Thank you, Board Member Golden.
I'm sorry, the assistant
May I
superintendent.
respond to Reverend Golden?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. If you look at the summary sheet, section 1001.452 addresses district and school advisory councils, Reverend Golden. So it is contained in this statute.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that the composition of the district advisory council shall only be made up of the voting members of, that's my whole point. That was the dissonance that I had with the statute itself. It does not say that the district advisory council shall be made up of the voting members of each school's advisory council, which would make it 600 people if it was just 10 anyway. That's the problem that I have with that.
Okay, Board Member Hopes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Vice Chair Messenger. I think that this is not one size fits all. We've got pre-K through 8 schools, we have high schools, we have middle schools, we have, elementary schools with 200 students, we have elementary schools with 800 students, and, I think it should be up to the community, it should be up to the parents that make up that school community and community leaders to decide, the size and scope of it. And I really think if we just, and I may be wrong, but if we just take out the sentence that says the council will be limited to 10 voting members, and leave it to the school administration, the community, the parents to come up with a SAC that meets their needs and engages the community and the school. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Hopes. I have a question. What is a non-voting member?
Those would be individuals who attend the meeting, but when there is a call for a vote, they are not permitted to vote at that time, but it is an open public meeting and anyone is welcome to attend. And many non-voting members may not attend every meeting, but they come to many of them. Just do not have the privilege of voting on select items.
is that phrase, is that term found anywhere in the Florida statutes?
It's a common term. I am not going to indicate that it is in Florida statute. I would need to investigate further or refer to our attorney.
Okay. I don't think it exists.
Okay.
I think it should be taken out. Either you are a member of the School Advisory Council or you're not. That's how I remember the statutes, and I was quite involved with school advisory councils at one time and represented a good chunk of the Gulf Coast about that as an advisory position. I think it's important to elect members of the School Advisory Council. It's important to have rules that encourage in participation of parents, and I think that this Section 1 discourages that, runs counter to what I think at least some of the board members believe. We're trying to encourage parent involvement. It's just a bad idea. And then anybody can attend. It can be somebody from Oshkosh, Wisconsin or something like that, show up. I guess they could be a non-voting member. I mean, it's ridiculous. And maybe I don't remember approving this, but I guess I was around then. And so I share blame, and I apologize to the world, that this was adopted. I don't think there's any argument here about this limitation of 10. It's very discouraging. It doesn't encourage parent involvement. It basically, the way it's structured is, well, this is going to be an administration committee. And we're talking about providing advice, from a broad sector in the school, and this doesn't hack it at all. And I hope that I'm not alone in believing that we should not drop this ball, but come back with new language with the help of staff that is encouraging, to parents' involvement and has flexibility. When I was on the SACs here, I was in the King Middle School and Manatee High School. There wasn't any such, number limitation. There was, pretty active. And in terms of electing them, I know, with my daughter, at the start of, one of the years at Manatee High, we had signs out there at the start of school, and you can be involved, you can be a member, and having ballots and stuff like that. I don't see a real effort in the drafting of this to encourage that kind of involvement. And I know not everybody is a fan of school advisory councils. Administratively, I know some people who were principals, they considered it basically a pain in the butt. I mean, that was their attitude. And I think that's a very negative attitude. It runs counter to what we're trying to foster in this district, we're all in this together. And this is a vehicle, for, parents and others to get together and hear what's going on and have input. So we're not going to republish it today, but I'm glad I'm not alone. Thank you. Board Member Golden.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The immediacy of the problem is that we have language in here that limits the SAC to 10 voting members. The general problem that you address in terms of membership and the election of members may not be sufficiently addressed in the language. Council members representing teachers, education support employees, students, and parents shall be elected by their respective peer groups at the school in a fair and equitable manner. And with respect to those elections, it says teachers, and this is the next section, teachers shall be elected by teachers, Education support employees should be elected by education supportees, students by students, and parents by parents. The only limiting factor on the SAC in terms of the policy is that 51% of the membership must be people not employed by the district. And so I'm not quite so sure that we don't cover the majority of the problem simply by eliminating that sentence, limiting the membership, because that's on the council. The council is self-forming, made up of 4 different groups, elected by the respective groups themselves. And we are saying by eliminating this minimum number, we leave the principal with the discretion to look after the elections to see whether that SAC reflects the racial, ethnic, and economic diversity of the population of the school. And so I don't want to overreact to this problem that has been self-imposed by nobody knows how, nobody knows when, and nobody knows who. It happens like that. And so if it's when we get to the appropriate time, I would hope that we could coalesce around the idea that simply removing the limitation on the size of the SAC would cover most of the problems that we have here with this policy.
Okay, Vice Chair Messenger.
So in order to move this forward, we have to publicly post this, correct? And it has to be posted for 30 days. And then it can come before us and we can change it, correct? So my request is that we, since it sounds like there is a majority of people that believe that this needs to be looked further into, that we ask that this is put on the agenda, I guess at the next meeting. I don't know if it's possible to add it tonight, so that it can be publicly posted for the 30 days so that we can get the ball rolling on this.
Okay, we got a request, and
Yes.
Mr. Dye.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the proposed language has to be posted for 30 days, not just the idea that we're going to
Okay.
change it, yeah.
Okay. So I would submit that what we would want to submit is just the removal of that sentence. That's the simplest way.
I agree with that.
Okay.
That would be what I would suggest as well then,
All right.
in order to get it posted and move forward.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, in order to get to the bottom of the can of worms, if you open up membership to anybody, which is fine, but then in order to vote, you need a quorum of 51%. Sometimes that can be difficult to obtain when you have a large membership body. Right. So while I understand that limiting it to 10 may be too limited, in order to have a quorum, in order to conduct business, I'm not quite sure what the correct answer is to that, but you may want to have some kind of a either flexibility in a quorum or some kind of a limitation on membership, but still a large enough membership to adequately represent the groups that are flagged in the rule.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, some good advice there. Board Member Golden.
That's well and good, but why should the 5 of us sit up here and try to figure out the difference between what's going to happen at Myaka Elementary and what's going to happen at Tilton and what's going to happen at the framework in which they have to operate is here. Let the principal do what the principal is supposed to do. The principal is responsible for providing that the elections take place and that the composition of the school advisory council complies with the law. Let that principal deal with, do I have a quorum? Do I have enough? Or how am I going to get that done? Instead of the 5 of us trying to pick a number that's going to
Or the
satisfy.
SAC, or the SAC itself.
Yes.
When I was on SACs, we had bylaws that provided that the schools decided the membership. You know, that gives flexibility to the SACs.
To do that.
You know, to determine.
I was chair of the SAC at Louise Johnson.
Okay, and I think for the most part, that worked pretty well. And
I recommend the 2 elder members on the board who served as SAC members take this on as their project.
We can't, no, we can't do that.
We need a recess right now.
Whatever you want, we're going along with it.
Recess right now.
But okay, Superintendent,
What I was gonna say is, what you had mentioned, Mr. Minor, by removing that language, it eliminates the confusion there. And the bylaws will put the framework that matches the policy and statute of how you go about voting. They do have rules and regulations about how many times you have to attend meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So the bylaws will lead to how they operate. And every SAC has to have governing bylaws. So really that should address each individual SAC.
okay, thank you. We're not gonna have any non-voting members. Okay. Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion? I think the idea is, at the next meeting, we would have a proposal, for revisions, in this policy, which if the board agrees upon it, then we could give notice of hearing, for adoption of the revision, and go from there. Okay, thank you. Thank you, board. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Okay.
Absolutely. There's a second part to this first item,
Okay,
however.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
addresses the discussion of the student progression plan policy timeline. And you should have that in front of you also. Ms. Boyce, was that disseminated at the same time? Thank you. So the recommendation is that the board workshop occur in June of 2020, the 23rd to be exact. The posting of the public review would be between the 23rd and July 21st, 2020. That there would be a cutoff at that time so that the school progression plan members can review the comments from the public as well as board members as they modify and consider recommendations for modification. And that's about, I think it's 6 days that is on there, the 22nd through the 28th. And the reason that is important is because 13 questions came to me personally the morning of the last workshop when we were reviewing the entire document. Additionally, the night before, we heard from a parent around 10:15. That does not permit us to properly review all of the feedback that we receive from the public or from the board members, and that would provide time to address it, adjust it, and come well prepared to the public hearing, which would be July 28th, 2020 is the recommendation, and board approval that same evening, with an opportunity to have it approved and begin utilization of the modifications and the adopted plan as we begin the new school year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, board member Golden.
I'm not quite so sure how this compares to the present process. The problem that I have is that it still only allows 6 days from the close of the posting of the public review to the student progression plan committee review and modifications based on public and board comment. So my question is, between July the 22nd and July the 28th, those 6 days, first off, I'm pretty sure there's not a board meeting.
That would be correct.
Within that
We're looking at the second and fourth Tuesday of the month during the months of June and July 2020.
Okay, so if we wanted to expand the time for public comment from the time of the first school board meeting in July until the time of the second school board meeting in July, what would we have to do to this timeline? Because that then would allow 2 weeks instead of 6 days.
Well, you're beginning June 23rd, which is the board workshop where we would come and present and it becomes public at that time. So it is open for public review beginning June 23rd through the 21st of July. So it's not 6 days, it's 21 days, which is the guideline for within board policy and the advertisement. And then July 22nd to 28 would be gathering all the comments that have been made. Sometimes we have a plethora of comments, other times there are a few. Every one should be reviewed by the committee, the SPP committee, Pupil Progression Plan Committee, in order to align the comments with current language and determine modifications that would be presented at the public hearing July 28th.
That is what I'm asking you about, those 6 days. Because if it's posted for public review, that means just that, it's posted. And I know you'll get some people that are gonna post during that time, but then I don't see a time where, based on public comment, that the people that come and stand here and the board comment, I don't see a time between a board meeting for that to happen, because this happens between July the 21st, public review, and July the 28th. I'm asking if we move one way or the other, the second hearing or the pushing back of the board workshop, I'm asking for more than 6 days for SPP committee review modifications based on public and board comment. And I'm asking that be, because that's what happened here. We wound up doing this over 2 board meetings.
That is correct.
Actually, it was 3. So I'm wanting to do it over 2 board meetings and be done with it, because we have given the requisite notice for public review, that we've done the requisite posting, and that we've had a board workshop. So do we have to move that back to the first meeting in June, or how?
It could occur that way, or July 28th could be the public hearing, and I'm looking at my calendar for an August meeting, and August 11th, 2020 would be the next board meeting after the 28th.
But then when does school start?
Prior, real close to that time.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that
Back
we
it
want
up
to-
in June.
Yes. Now, that's
It would
just
be
me
the
talking. I
first
haven't
board
heard anybody
meeting.
else say anything, so.
I understand, I'm hearing your input as beginning on the 9th of June, and then adjust accordingly.
Yes, which allows a 2 full week time frame after the public review has been posted for any committee review, modifications. You can come to that July, whichever one it was, the July 20, whatever that board meeting is, that's in between there.
Yes, sir.
Does that make
could be
sense?
modified. Yes, sir, it does make perfect sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Vice Chair Messenger.
I'm fine with that, but I do want to point out that truly it would be posted for public review a week before the 23rd of June, because it is whole week posted a week before that even. So there is a week for the public to look at it, even prior to that date,
June 2nd would be the week before.
when it really gets published and gets posted out there.
Correct, because of the posting for the
Yeah.
board agenda, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay. Go on to discussion of new facility commemorative plaques. And I guess the superintendent's going to lead us in that.
Actually, I'm turning it over to Mr. Wagner.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. So we have a packet in front of you. It's coming around right now from Ms. Boyce that has the plaque. It's a plaque requirements for major construction projects. The bottom line is the plaque shall include the full names of the board members and the superintendent, the proper name of the school, the name of the architectural firm and construction manager, and the completion date of the project. In your packet, there's copies of, or photographs of 31 plaques around the district. You can see they're all different layouts, but they really have the same information on them with regards to the people's names and the year that the school opened. The size is usually 12 by 16 or 20 by 30, depending on where it's going to be located. Obviously, they're made of metal, or at the last plaque is aluminum at MTC. They're highly visible, And so the conversation has come up on who's listed on the plaque and when. Historically, we've listed the individuals of the board when the construction manager or architect contracts have been executed. There's been some questions about, you know, should we continue with that practice? What was done in the last 3 schools? So I'm open for comments or concerns or questions about the packet. I know you haven't had a chance to review it yet, but.
What were the size dimensions that you just mentioned?
So it's 12 by 16 or 20 by 30.
Now, that's what we have in our packet. Is that correct?
Agreed, you just have photographs of them.
And well, I think there's something to be said for listing those at initiation and those that at the completion. It seems like I saw a plaque design both ways. Is that in here?
That's not, I can pass that around. There's 2 drafts that are coming around, so I'll pass the first draft 1. And then draft 2 is now coming around. So draft 1 is the idea to have both sets of board members at the time of the approval of the construction manager and the engineering firms and the architects. And the other draft 2 is the same, it's just at the time of groundbreaking. So this would list both of them, still keeping with the same idea of having the name of the school, the year that the school opens. Of course, the construction manager and the architect and engineers are not changing, those are listed at the bottom. But it would have 2 sides, so it would have the groundbreaking and the dedication listed.
Okay, what is the size on, is this the way it is out of Barbara Harvey right now?
Nope, Barbara Harvey is the way that, Barbara Harvey plaque is showing the board at the time of the dedication of Barbara Harvey. Same with the high school and same with the middle school.
What, on this example, I guess with this draft 2, okay.
So draft 1 and draft 2 are really the same, other than just listing. The dedication is staying the same on both of them. So the dedication on the right hand of the side is the same, obviously, and the left hand is, the one is the contract approval, and then later is the groundbreaking.
Mr. Meyer?
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, Board Member Oates.
Yeah, you know, first and foremost, it's up to the board to decide how we do this, and I do like the chairman's idea of when the building was dedicated, the board that was there when the building was dedicated, and as I look through it, you know, from a different perspective, I'm kind of thinking of the students who are going to look at it every day and what's meaningful for them. And if I think through kind of the process is when you have the groundbreaking and the community's there and there's a picture taken of everybody and you see that whatever it is at the time, the picture, the students coming forward, look at that, and then the dedication, you see kind of the beginning and then the final product. And I know, like at USF, I think it was when the board approved the contract or something like that. And I'm thinking to a student, that doesn't mean much to them. And then when Mr. Wagner and I talked about MTC was approved, I don't know, 3 or 4 years before they ever started construction. There was a different board there that actually kind of initiated it. So I like the idea of having reference points that the students who are gonna look at this for years to come, when the shovel went in the ground and what that pasture looked like, and then when the dedication was there and what it looked like when the first students arrived. And so that's my perspective on it. If we're gonna have the dedication, then we should have another reference point that people can relate to. And speaking with people, it's up to the board how we do it, but it is a board decision.
Okay, was it Board Member Kennedy, or?
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to belabor this point, but, so apparently there is no written policy. This is a procedure in the district, which changed from what I'm told, between the dedication of MTC and now these three. And this is another example of why we as board members, past and present, should be and should have been mindful of our actions, because something happens we don't like, and then we send people's superintendent and staff into action. And I think this is another one of those examples, without going into detail. But I think, simply put, is that anytime there is a dedication of a school or a plaque is being made, as Dr. Hopes has said, this should be brought to the full board. This should not be a decision of the chair. And honestly, I think, I mean, it's not a big deal. It's a plaque, and certainly not going to suggest we change anything. But I think it would have been better done over this past year if these plaques were brought to the board for some options or consideration. Like John Colon is not on the board anymore, but his name is nowhere on any of these plaques, and he was here for the approval of these schools and the process of every approval step along the way. So the bottom line for me is that this should be a decision of the full board. When we're putting something into bronze, I think this should not be the decision of one board member. It should be the decision of all five. Thanks.
I see John Cologne's name on these. Okay. Vice Chair Messenger.
Where is that?
They're on these, but they're not on the buildings that you're mentioning now.
That's a mock-up.
These are
And
examples.
as long as, by the way, these two drafts here, I think this is, let me put it this way, this is a little much. I think all you need is the superintendent, the 5 board members, your CM, and your architect and engineer. Like, having 2 lists of names, it's just, and many of those names are gonna be the same, it's confusing. I think what we've
Not
done.
in this case, because it spanned three fiscal years, really.
Yeah, true, but that brings me back to the board having a discussion, and so the board could have said, well, we should be mindful of this entire process, and maybe we should try to incorporate the board members that were involved in that process. And if the current board chooses to take it any way they want, but I completely, that 2 lists of names, even if there were 5 different names on both sides, I just don't think that's visually appealing. But again, if the board decides, then it's a moot point. And
Okay, let's go.
I'm
Vice
sorry,
Chair
I wanted to
Messenger.
understand exactly what he's suggesting. You're suggesting to keep it as it is right now, which is the current board? Because right
No.
now, what it is the current board. It's not who, planned it years ago.
cool.
So is your suggestion just to keep it that way? I'm just
No.
trying to understand what your
Sure.
suggestion is.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My suggestion is, whenever this comes up again, is that before a plaque is made, the board that is seated at that time to approve the expense of that plaque should approve its design.
I 100% agree with that statement. I have no problem with that statement. What I'm trying to understand is, this is for right now. From my understanding, this is for our current 3 schools that we just opened. So what I'm trying to understand is, are you saying we should keep the plaques as they are? Or are you saying that they should go to right now, they're more like this?
No, I'm saying that we should, the ones that are up.
Just
keep
leave them.
Yeah, that horse is out of the barn.
No, it's not.
Horse is out of that barn. Okay, thank you. I have one other thing to add. I kind of agree with you. It's a plaque. However, I will point out, and I think it's the Braden River Library, and I don't quote me on this, but I think it's Braden River Library, that their commemoration plaque does recognize the changes in the seats through the county commission. it wasn't done in this manner. I don't think it had like repeated names. I can't remember exactly how it was done. It might have said the year, like so and so from to 99, and then so and so from 2000 to 2014. I think.
It's a good compromise.
So that it wasn't as this, but it was like all one thing, but it did denote that there were different people involved. And I think there's value to that. I think that, you know, the past superintendent and the past board members that were a part of it over time, I think they should be included overall. How that looks, I'm not a graphic designer. I don't necessarily know the best way. I do remember that, and I remember noting like, oh, well, you know, it kind of noted both people that were there, and I think that that's important, you know, so.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to respond to one point.
Okay, Board Member Kennedy?
That, I mean, if there is a consensus of the board that you want to go back and redo these plaques, I mean, I'm certainly open to that, but we as a group should make that decision.
Agreed.
Okay, Board Member Golden?
I disagree that it's just a plaque.
It's important.
This is important. And this is serious business. I also agree that one person should not have the capacity to decide whose name goes on a plaque. I built the Family Life Center, the church that I pastored for about 20 years. Took me about 4 years to get it done, and that is exactly what we did. We listed the officers who were there at the time of the breaking of the ground, and then we came back and we listed the officers who were there at the time we marched into the building.
Yeah.
Now, having said all that, I cannot help but notice that with respect to draft 1 and draft 2, the only name that is on both of them with respect to the duality of recognition, and that is not on either of them in terms of having been there at the inception, is the name of Reverend Golden. So I want to be very clear here. I fully support taking down the names of the new members, since I'm the only new member here. That is what I would really like. I had no part to play in the financing, no part to play in the decision-making that led to the school. And while it's nice to have my name there, I would really rather have my name attached to something that I did, some work that I accomplished. To that end, I am going to ask that those plaques be removed, and that the plaques with respect to those 2 schools or those 3 schools be replaced with the board members who were on the board at the time of the groundbreaking, which includes everybody that was here at that time, and it includes Mr. Cologne, whose name would also be there. And the only name that would be excluded would be my name and the current superintendent's name. Now,
I don't like that idea, Mr. Chair.
wait just a minute.
Okay,
Do I get to finish?
Yeah,
or
sure, go
is
right
it-
ahead.
Okay, all right. Because I think this is a very important statement that we as a board make about the service that people have given after having been elected to this board. Ain't nobody up here because you just decided to make it. A lot of folk voted to put you up here. And I just think it's, you know, this is no Solomon-like thing where we're gonna split the baby in half and we're gonna recognize it. You're either gonna recognize the people that began it, or you're gonna recognize the people that were there when it was concluded. To recognize both groups takes away from both groups. And I say that from someone who did that.
okay. I think that, okay, I think Board Member Hopes, and then Vice Chair Messenger.
I still go back, I'm thinking about all the children that are gonna look at that plaque for decades to come. And I like the idea of those people who were there when we broke ground, and I envisioned pictures of the ground breaking and the shovels in the ground, and then the folks that were responsible for being there when the building was dedicated and open to the community, and pictures, and you know, I think it's a unique opportunity to stimulate inquiry. Who were these people? And you know, and I think back at some of the groundbreakings, the mud, you know, actually when Charlie was chairman and we did the high school, it was a beautiful day. But you know, I think it's appropriate to recognize those folks who were elected to office, that were there and responsible for signing those budgets for those new schools to open, and to, you know, to cut that ribbon. So, I mean, I like the idea, because I'm thinking children will understand what a groundbreaking and a shovel in the ground is, and they'll understand what a dedication and a ribbon cutting is. And that's something that, you know, that a child that's gonna spend as many as 13, 14 years with us, you know, will understand, and it will have meaning to them, and those people who were involved. So you know, I would like to see the groundbreaking board and officers and superintendent, and the dedication board, officers, and superintendent.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Hope. Vice Chair Messenger.
I would just like to point out, Mr. Golden, you've been here almost a year, and here's a list of things that you've been included on your vote that all have to do with Harvey Elementary. Substantial completion, you voted on that. A special warranty deed for Harvey, you voted on that. Access roadway for Harvey, you voted on that. He voted one way or another. The public hearing for student assignment, you were here and we voted on that. All the redistricting procedures, you voted on that. These all are you. So I'm not saying that I could go through. By the way, I type in Harvey Elementary, there's 19 things and there's only a couple that were the year before. So I'm just saying, you can't throw up your hands and go, well, I'm new here. You've been here almost a year. There's a lot of things that you are involved in, and I can keep going if you'd like me to go, keep going, but I don't think you need me to do that. To prove my
Messenger is the board historian.
to prove my point. No, it's just the computer, and I just know how to type things in and look and read. To prove my point that perhaps what Dr. Hopes is suggesting is appropriate. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, now that Vice Chair Messenger has found Board Member Golden guilty.
All by itself.
I have more.
Multiple counts. Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Messenger.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Board Member Kennedy.
hopefully close this up, but I want to, I think Gina hit the nail on the head for me, which I think is a great idea, which is the county model, which is just include the names of anybody who was involved in the process from start to finish. I think Dr. Green is missing. I think Karen Carpenter's missing. As mentioned, Reverend Golden, you can disagree with me, that's fine, but let me at least speak. There's no way we take Reverend Golden's name off here. I think anybody who's involved should be on the plaque. And as I said, it should be a decision of the full board. And I do want to direct your attention, if you think about every time you walk out of MTC, the campus on State Route 70, there is and this is what started this whole issue way back then. And Mary Cantrell, God bless her, a board member raised the stink because their name was not on the plaque. And so she, in the moment, said, well, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take a picture of the ribbon cutting, and that picture, it's a 20 by 30, it's right above the plaque. And that to me is like the most meaningful presentation at any of our school campuses, because honestly, and I didn't mean to be flippant about plaques, I apologize for that, but I do tend to walk right past them, but you all have made good points. But I think that is really a great, I don't think we need to put this in policy, but I think that plaque and the combination of the picture is real. I just want to share that because I've always, every single time I walk out of that campus, that picture catches my eye, and which then draws my attention to the plaque. So I just want to voice my support for Gina's idea, which is including people's names, and also supporting Gina's idea that we include Reverend Golden. Peace. I'm out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Superintendent Saunders.
Can I just get clarification so that Mr. Wagner and I know what you're expecting? Do you want us to go look at how that library is depicted? Then we can send you a picture of that, so you're acknowledging that that's how you want it displayed. And
No.
I'd hate to send you to Witch Hunt, and I sent you to the wrong place, 'cause I go to all the libraries. But I think it was that one, but,
I would like to make a motion that we have the groundbreaking.
yeah, I'm fine with draft
and
two.
And the dedication.
draft two? Okay.
Groundbreaking and dedication, the makeup of the board, officers, and superintendent. Groundbreaking and dedication. Those are very definitive dates.
Okay, we can do that.
We understand.
Th-
We got it.
This is a workshop, we can do that.
We could, we were just coming for advice, so we
Okay.
can do that without a vote or what, if
Well-
that's the consensus, we can do that, if you.
Okay, well, seems like we had a vote a little earlier on something, but, okay, I'm asking Mr. Dye, can we vote on this?
Can get consensus so that we know.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the question is vote on what? I mean, if you're just giving direction to the administration, then I think you can just give direction. If you think it's best through a vote, if you think the board is split and you need a vote in order to determine which direction the board is going in, I think you should do that. But you aren't approving a policy or some other official action. You're simply sending advice to the administration.
Okay, thank you very much. We've had a motion by Mr. Hopes that the plaques for dedicating, I guess, buildings, include on it the names of those who were on the board as board members or superintendents at the time of dedication of that facility, along with the same, and also at the time of groundbreaking, the list of the board members and the superintendent.
Along with the dates of such.
And with, I'm not sure about what I'm looking at right now is draft 2, second page. That did not have any date, well, okay, it has the date, I guess, of the dedication, okay. And I guess the model is on 2. Is that consistent with your intent and your motion, Board Member Holtz?
That's fine. I mean, you could also list the date of the groundbreaking and the day of the dedication, or the year of the groundbreaking and the year of the dedication, or something, however.
Okay. Let's go with, the
month and
motion
the
is to
year.
approve draft 2. Is that okay? Model on draft 2.
Somehow I have 2 draft 1s.
Well, you add them together and you get 2.
Mr. Meyer?
But it looks the same.
Okay, let's let Mr. Hopes sort this out here.
That's fine.
Okay. Now, we'll get to discussion. It's been moved by Mr. Hopes. Is there a second to Mr. Hopes' motion? I guess it's gonna die, or nobody's gonna second your motion. I'll second it, and we'll have discussion. Mr. Kennedy has some comments on the motion, I guess.
This will be the first time I've ever seen a motion at a workshop, number one. And number two, my suggestion is, why don't we just add this to the agenda at the beginning of tonight's meeting and do this properly?
Okay. I have an
Hashed out,
opinion.
I've never seen a motion at a workshop. This is a work session, not a meeting, not a regular meeting.
Okay, well, that's why I elicited opinion from our attorney. Okay. Okay. Is there any other discussions about Mr. Hopes' motion? Okay, the chair will call it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, indicate by saying nay. All I heard was one nay.
I just don't think that this is the right, it's during workshops. This is not an action item. This was not published, that it was gonna be an action item, and I don't see why we can't do this at the board meeting if this is so necessary. I think there was a consensus drawn, and I don't think this is,
So we have a consensus.
We have a consensus. Is that-
We do. We know what.
Okay, we got a consensus of number 2. So, okay, thank you. All right, next thing is discussion of potential next steps for LMA. Excuse me? My town. New facility, okay, we already done that.
Did you want to go ahead and get his PowerPoint up while he just,
You want some water? Mr. Chairman, you want Coke?
I'm sorry.
You want Coke?
No, I'm all set, but thank you for asking. What do we got? 4.
Well, I can do that, or I can go upstairs and get a cough drop. Why, do you have water with you?
I was gonna go grab one. You want me to get
Do you mind? Thank you.
I've been here. Tim.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Do we have copies for those in the audience?
do we have any copies? We'll go make some.
Yeah.
I can give mine out too. I've got the computer.
Is it the same that we got
Version.
emailed earlier? Yes. Mine too.
You may give Giuseppe one, and you can give one over there. Here's an extra one too. Folks want one. Right there. We'll get you a copy. You'll make a copy. Oh, well, thank you, thank you.
Okay. The
Yes.
chair's going to declare a 5-minute break. Is that okay? I think we've been going quite a ways. We'll take a health break for 5 minutes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll go get my cough drop. That'll really be covered.
After the 5-minute break, I'll take a 5-minute.
Quite. That might be all you have tonight.
Well, I had a detail, but I figured I was gonna stop and say this is the actual amount, and just break down. And then the current,
Okay. Okay, we're gonna resume our workshop with a discussion of potential next steps for the Lincoln Memorial Academy, LMA. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Board Chair,
Thank you.
board members, and Superintendent Saunders. Thanks for having me today. I'll be providing information for you to help with a discussion on potential next steps for Lincoln Memorial Academy. In the event that the ruling is in favor of LMA, the school charter would be reinstated, the governing board be reinstated, and then the district services currently provided by the district, they would immediately end. So in regard, for example, finance and budget services, payroll, HR, insurance with the district, IT, curriculum and instruction support, that would cease.
Mr. Pastilla, click the slide for us so that we
Oh,
can.
I'm sorry.
I know that's the, yeah,
Yep,
thank you.
thank you. The LMA would also then be responsible for the past debt, which is approximately $1.5 million. In the event that
If there's any questions as we're going along, can we interrupt you?
Sure.
Okay. Now, the board is not responsible, the school board of Manatee County is not responsible for that $1.5 million debt.
Correct.
Is that correct? And it's against the law for the school board of Manatee County to pay any of that debt. Is that correct?
Correct.
And doesn't the board of LMA remain responsible for that debt?
That's what I understand, but I defer to council, but that's how I understand it.
Okay. So they're still responsible no matter what?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we go any further, would you mind, I know we know who you are,
I'm sorry.
but would you mind telling us how this fell to you and who you are for the people who are listening?
Yes, of course.
Would you do that, please?
Yes, my name is Dr. Frank Pistella. I'm the Director for District Support. We support all our 14 charter schools on a daily basis. For example, today we had our charter school principals meeting this morning, and we meet with them to do our best to enhance student achievement and enhance the school operations of their schools. So we also monitor their schools, collect data, collect required documentation by statute to make sure that they're in compliance with an array of items. And we also review and accept applications, and we also conduct renewal reviews when charter schools are up for renewal. But I think our most important role is that we support them on a daily basis as a liaison. We assist the charter schools. We provide information. A lot of times they call us just to get information on how they can do things better. And so that's really, I think, one of our most important roles in district support.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Hopes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Pastella, let's look at your first slide. And this is in the event, Monday or earlier, that the administrative hearing officer issues a ruling in favor of LMA, basically voiding this board's immediate termination of their charter. So you've listed all of these things that they need to be prepared to do upon an issuance of an order in their favor. Would this order relieve LMA and/or the district of the requirement for a financial turnaround plan? And given their D grade, does that relieve them of the responsibility for an academic turnaround plan should they get a ruling in their favor?
Well, the academic plan, they still have to follow those guidelines by the DOE. And the first question in regards to
the financial turnaround plan, given their declining financial position and their insolvency.
I mean, I think I'm going by what statute they would need to have some type of plan, because right now there is an estimated debt of 1.5 million, so that would have to be rectified in some way.
Have we asked LMA at the very least for how they would continue services upon the immediacy of an order in their favor?
Well, I know we have asked them repeatedly. We haven't received anything as of today
Okay.
regarding their plan.
Okay, so we have asked them to share with us their plan to continue to pay their teachers, to cover their benefits, provide internet services, cover security and all that. To date, we don't have a plan from them. We've asked them, but we do not have a plan for how they're going to do this should they get a favorable ruling from the administrative law judge.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are you go on to the next slide?
Yes, good.
In the event the ruling is in favor of the district, the dissolution of the LMA charter would be confirmed, except for an appeal by to the District Court of Appeals. And also, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, I believe the school board's intent is for Lincoln Memorial Academy to be a charter school.
Mr. Chairman, a question?
Okay, Board Member Hopes?
And this may be for legal counsel, because I know these decisions are handled differently depending on the agency and the jurisdiction. Would a ruling by the administrative law judge upholding our termination resolve in the pendency of the case, even though it may go to the District Court of Appeals? Or are we still in that limbo land?
From my interpretation, we're not in limbo land. A ruling from the administrative law.
Because I thought that was a final order.
Technically, it's not a final order, it's an appeal. It's an order from a DOA proceeding, which always has another level of appeal to the DCA. So but it doesn't stop us. That's a ruling from the Department of Administrative Hearings. That ruling is the final order until it's undone.
Until it's undone.
Exactly.
And that's the point, because in my interpretation of the statutes, the final order is required in that 60-day period of time, and we're required to maintain the operational control, the operations of the charter school during the pendency of the DOA case.
You actually had a choice as a board to close it down immediately or to assume the operation. This board assumed the operation.
Okay, thank you.
You did have the option.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I want to make it clear that those are the decisions we have to make, because that is the decision until such time should a District Court of Appeals overturn the ruling of the administrative law judge.
If we were to, on the hypothetical situation, if we were to go that way, bear in mind, Dr. Hopes, the person that represented them is not an attorney. They'd have to retain an attorney, order a record. It's a very costly process.
We would have to move forward.
To move forward to there and they'll go ahead and to argue a case and to prevail. Ultimately, they'd have to look at the record itself, find some error within the record to take in an effective appeal.
I've handled appeals of DOA cases, and they can go on for a year, 2 or 3.
4.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Hopes. Or no, Board Member Golden.
I'll yield my time to Reverend Golden.
Okay.
I would like to know if,
Yes, Judge.
in the eventuality of a decision in our favor, if there is a requirement that the appellant of an administrative hearing ruling post a bond.
I don't know of a bond requirement by statute. It's not a surety. It's not that type of proceeding I'm aware of. I'll definitely research it. But I would tell you, I don't believe so for any party to post some type of performance bond or otherwise. I did not see that within statute. But again, I will speak with Mr. Dye and confirm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Please proceed. Okay.
Thank you. Now, the decisions for the school board to make include the following: the management of LMA for the remainder of the school year, the 2019-2020 school year, and then management of LMA for the next school year and beyond. Now, for the 2019-2020 school year, without an approved charter, LMA could continue to be a traditional district school. If the school board wants LMA to become a charter school, then there are steps that would have to be followed. So the new charter application would need to be submitted for 6th through 8th grade middle school at the current school site. And then the district would review the application, submit recommendations to the superintendent, and then the board would approve or deny that application. So those would be the basic steps for LMA to become a charter school.
Okay, I'm sorry, Board Member Kennedy.
Two questions. It has to be a 6th through 8th charter application? Like another charter operator couldn't come in and say, we want to do a K through 8 on that campus?
I mean, that would be a possibility that the board could consider.
Okay, no, I was just, because it says specifically in the presentation, it submitted for a 6th through 8 middle school.
If you wanted to keep the current grade configuration, then it would be and the current site, then it would be a 6th through 8th at the current site.
Okay, Superintendent Saunders?
Because it's a middle school facility, there are certain regulations for an elementary K-8, specifically primary sites for bathrooms and so forth. So there would have to be some retrofit. So that's why he made 6 to 8, because that was the quickest way to get it approved as is. Doesn't mean it can't change in the future, but
Okay.
it's because of the facility.
Just want to make sure. And then, in the event that the district does prevail, and then prevails upon a possible appeal, it is now September. What would be the time frame?
We have it.
Oh, it's coming up.
Coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Dr.
thank you.
Costello.
Board Member Kennedy.
Continue.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Okay, now moving forward, options to consider would be approving a standard charter application, approving a charter application and offering district services for a fee, which I'll explain in a bit, or LMA remains a traditional middle school. Now, approving a charter. A standard charter application where an applicant is willing to lease the current LMA building and be ready to open. We would want them to open for the 2020-2021 school year. So with that, another option, is to approve a charter application and offer district services for a fee. This type of model is seen in some other districts. I know in Miami-Dade, I visited Miami-Dade and discussed with them their district-managed charter schools. And with the district-managed charter school, the governance and ultimate responsibility of the school still rests in the hands of the charter school's governing board, and they have complete autonomy over the day-to-day operations of that charter school. The district's role would be to provide certain managerial management services based on an agreement with all the parties. The staff employees are employees of the charter school. The principal is hired by the governing board. That principal reports to the governing board as do all charter schools. Sorry, I
Okay,
didn't move.
Board Member Golden?
Yes, sir. When we made this decision on the 23rd of July, at that time, we expressed our intent for the school to be a charter school. We didn't say anything at all about it becoming a traditional middle school, and we didn't say anything at all about a district-managed charter school. So,
what I'm trying to say is that I'm just providing options so that you have all the information.
okay, we've got 30 minutes before we got to go into a school board meeting. What I want to hear, very much in detail, is how we get this school returned to the community which bore it, in which it was born, in the way in which it was, in the way it was removed. Now, we may have another discussion later on about a district managed, district led. We may even have to get to a point, if we can never get back to a charter school, we may have to get to a traditional middle school. But right now, in this workshop, in the midst of what's happening with respect to the community and the litigation, I want to hear how we can get where we said we wanted to go. Because I am really, really getting tired of being told that we're trying to close this school. I'm really, really getting tired of being told that we're trying to take this school back. So I don't want to leave here today with any impression about that. I want to talk about one thing, how it can be the charter school that it was on July the 22nd of this year.
Okay.
Board Member Hope.
I think it's important that we hear the presentation, because I think what you're gonna find is there are certain things that we have to do immediately, and there are pathways, and there are two types of independently managed community charter schools. And I think it's important that we hear from the administration what we're gonna be confronted with and decisions we're gonna have to make, because we will not on day one be able to approve a charter school application as it was on the night we terminated it. It's not a possibility. So I think it's important that we hear, and we may very well next week have to schedule another workshop and deal with reality. But right now, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to hear from the administration. They put a lot of thought into this, and it didn't happen overnight. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you, Board Member Hope. Board Member Kennedy.
I think, Dr. Hopes, you raise a good point. We should hear but I do have a question about this slide right here, which I want to, or these two slides. And my question is basically,
Which slide are you on?
approve a charter slide, and the next one is a district managed charter slide?
Yes.
What's the difference? I mean, they both seem exactly the same. One is a third party operator who enters into a contract to use the facilities. I guess that would be a conversion, would be able to use the facility at no cost.
The first approve a charter would be approving a standard charter application where that charter, that individual or group of people who have a charter application, and if it's approved, they would be providing all the services for their school unless they had an ESP, an educational service provider. We have charter schools that don't get involved with payroll or curriculum instruction, and some of these areas of services that's maybe not their expertise, and so they hire ESP and then that ESP charges them a certain percentage so that they can provide the payrolls, processing, instructional curriculum support. And so
You already answered my question right there.
Okay.
So basically with the district managed charter, the school district becomes, in a sense,
Could.
Yes, could, exactly.
Mr. Chairman, what may be helpful if Dr. Patel, if he gave an example of a district managed charter, say in Miami-Dade County?
that's why that was one of my slides.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So the next slide, the scope of services could be divided, and this is just one example, and this is an example from Miami-Dade, where you have scope of services could include support under educational support, services under operational support, financial management, and then the third, governance and human resource support. So for governance and human resource support, of course, HR services, payroll, onboarding new teachers, new employees, fingerprinting, all those different types of things, the district could provide that support. And then the governance piece, actually having staff members go out to the governing board meetings and doing the minutes and submitting the minutes and doing all those types of governance compliance activities. So that would just be one example. And the scope of services is something that the district and the charter school can agree upon. And it's almost like an a la carte. You have schools in Miami-Dade that choose maybe two of these four or all four. Maybe governance, human resource support, they have that down. They don't need any help with that. So it's more like an a la carte type of services. It's seen as not as an obtrusive, as that the district is putting their hand in to control the district, to control the charter school. It's seen as providing services that they may have to get from someplace else, and if the district can provide those services in a more efficient manner and at a lower cost, then that's a win-win for the school, the students, and the district. And so that's the rationale behind the district-managed charter school services as seen in Miami-Dade. It's seen as a very positive type of a supportive type of arrangement that, of course, has to be agreed upon by all the parties.
Mr. Chair.
Board Member Golden.
Yes. Okay. This ain't Miami-Dade. And the problem that we have here is a problem of perception. You see, if this is going to be an arranged marriage or a shotgun wedding, then that ain't really what it's about. This school was taken by unilateral action by this board on the 23rd of July. And what I'm wanting to hear from you is how do we get back there with the decisions being made by the same people who were supposed to have made them on the 22nd? I have no qualms at all about the decision that we made on the 23rd. What I do not want to participate in is the shell game where now you see it and now you don't. Because either they're going to ask a third party to provide all these things that you're talking about, or they're going to ask the school district. But whichever one they do ought to be their decision. It's not an option for the school. These are our options. And I'm suggesting to my colleagues that we do not want to go down the slippery slope of pursuing options when in fact we did not offer any options when we decided to take control. The same certainty that we exercised in taking control of this school on the 23rd is the same certainty that we ought to be trying to exercise in returning control of this school to the community that gave it that it was taken from. So this is like somebody said, we're going to go through this a lot, but I want to make sure that the road that we're going down will lead us to the place that the community wants it to be led to. And if in fact it results in us being back here next year saying, well, instead of closing it, instead of taking it over, we're going to close it down, so be it. But for us to substitute our judgment for all of the stuff that these people have gone through, no, I don't want to do that. So please help me here. Talk with me about the timeline. Yeah, the timeline.
We need a charter school applicant.
Okay.
We need a charter school applicant that is willing to submit an application for 6th through 8th grade middle school, that is willing to lease the building and that has a viable curriculum instructional plan, a viable financial plan, and a viable organizational plan. That's what we need. So we need to find ways to be able to provide the support and provide the opportunity to get those applicants here so that we can look at them, vet them with the help of the community, help of their staff members, our district staff members, and to find an applicant that we think that would meet the needs of the students in the community, and then have that applicant submit their application for review and go through the regular process with an adjusted timeline so that we can hopefully have a charter school application approved for the start of the next school year.
Doctor, I understand exactly what you just said, but that is not my position. I'm not wanting them to help me. I want us to help them. I want to be very, very clear. I want us to give this community whatever resources they need to make the decisions that they need to make to give them the school that you just described. One that is financially sound, one that is academically sound, one that is operationally sound, one that can be run right this time. But I want that to be their decision.
In order to have a charter school open in a district, a charter application must be submitted, which is a very challenging process. It's very extensive to try to complete. Many individuals or groups of people take a year or over a year to put together an application for consideration. So the idea is to try to find interested applicants to submit an application so that we can look at it for its viability, so that to make sure that it meets the needs of our students in our community. And that's the only way that I know of is to have a charter school is through that application process. I don't know of another way to approve a charter school for a district without going through the charter school application process.
Mr. Chairman, my last question, and I'll be done.
Okay.
Is there a mechanism that we can employ that will help the community develop that type of charter? How do we have community meetings? Do we have members from the community vet the so-called applicants that we are now imagining are out there? Are those things possible?
Then, in this next slide, I kind of explain one scenario.
Let me share something. I understand this. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that after this meeting is over and the community is assembled to hear what went on here today, that it is understood one thing only, that this board is committed to returning this charter school to this community, and we will not be scapegoated by being told, well, you all took it out of our hands. No, sir. You want a charter school? Apply for one and get that application approved.
Well, what we would want to do is encourage the submission of a charter school application of multiple proposals, and then formulate a committee that would be comprised of community members, the district, staff members, so they could look at the proposals, vet the proposals, and then decide on which proposal seems to meet, that we believe meet the needs of the students in the community with the help of the community and the staff members. And then the board would choose that applicant to submit an application, so that hopefully within the vetting process, we would have picked someone that we felt would be able to provide a viable application, so that when we go through the application process, that it will be approved, because they do have the sound details in that application, which applications are usually about that thick. That's how expensive they are. I mean, that's how extensive they are. And so we want to make sure that we find an applicant that will meet the needs of our students, and at the same time, they're a viable charter school option.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Messenger.
I have, I guess, a concern about the process that you just mentioned. I like the idea of it, but my concern is this community group may choose, in the community, I think it's the community members and district staff, and they may choose one, but the law does not limit other companies from still applying, correct? So even if you were to put out this request for proposals, which is what I think it says in and the committee were to take the time to limit it, to narrow it down to one, that would not limit anyone else from still putting one out there, correct?
Ms. Messenger, you're asking a great question. Under Florida statute, once you apply for a charter school, it has to be approved or denied. But they also have to list a primary place where they will open the school, as well as a secondary. So technically, you could be in a situation where you're facing multiple applications that this board would be required to approve absent an appeal process. Well, of course, someone could say afterwards, I'm not going to accept a secondary building. I have an approved application and only want Lincoln Memorial Academy. But you could be in a very precarious situation with this board for any of those applications, because in order to deny an application, there has to be a good faith basis. There has to be something wrong with the curriculum, something wrong with the governance, a basis for the denial.
I see. So the purpose of doing this would be to try and limit that, because you could have multiple applicants if you did not do this RFP process? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think the RFP process could result in multiple applicants. I think we want community input. There's no doubt in our mind.
Great, that's my thing. I want that, but I'm afraid that this is gonna get more, I don't know the right word, muddled?
I'll just say this, the RFP process is getting the voice out to the community as well. Hey, we want this. It's somewhat of a hybrid. You gotta be careful what you ask for. What you ask for could get it, but I'm just alerting the board, if you send out to RFP, you could wind up with multiple applicants submitting the application and ultimately having to approve those applications absent a good faith basis. That is the situation. But community involvement, this is the way of getting community involvement. That's why the slide is there, for that very purpose.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we keep talking about this community like they're outside of this process. This community is the reason we are involved in this to begin with, because absent a concern for the community, we could have closed the school down on the 23rd. Now, I want to stop dancing around this. I want to make absolutely sure that the responsibility and the authority for going forward is going to rest with that community. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what hoops we have to jump through to get there. That's where we're going to start. And it's when they give up, when they say, we can't find anybody, when they say, we don't have anybody that's willing to step up and take on this challenge. When they do that, then I want to have this conversation about other alternatives, because I'm convinced that we are not going to close the school, and I'm convinced that we do not want to return it to its traditional status. But I don't want to keep dancing around this, we want community input. No, I don't want community input. I don't want community involvement. I want them to be leading this.
Reverend Golden, in your response to what you've said, members of that community would have to create an application, apply to become a charter school, and go through the process as required by statute.
Okay, and there is nothing that we can do in terms of creating a community group that would facilitate that.
I would say to you, we have to be very careful. Ultimately, you are governance. You have to be impartial when you go ahead and approve something. So ultimately, I would say to you that we would be somewhat hard-pressed to go out there, marshal the community, put everything together, spoon-feed it to us for a stamp of approval. That is something that we could have difficulty with. Ultimately, an application would be submitted, would be reviewed for again, financial stability, number one. Academic accountability, the academics must be tied to the Florida Sunshine Standards.
You know
So at the end, Reverend Golden, there's a process. This process is not arbitrary. It's not something that we create as a district. It's governed by statute. So should members of the community decide to want to pursue Lincoln Memorial Academy as a charter, they would be able to go ahead, submit an application for due consideration amongst this board. This board's not going to be it's not going to be secreted who applied. You'll be able to review the recommendations.
May I add to something?
No. Let me talk with you. First off, we are now in a dual capacity. We're not only the school board for the entire county, we are now the board, the governing board of that school. So I have an inherent conflict by statute, the same statute you just talked about.
What is the statute?
Okay, and so I'm just saying at this point in time, when I sit on this side of the table as the governing board of Lincoln Memorial Academy, I want this board sitting on this side of the table to get the community input that is necessary for us to feel comfortable when we get on this side of the table, the other side, to say, we support that. Now, how it gets there and how long and how difficult, we're going to rise to that challenge. So I don't want to talk about how hard it is anymore. I know it's hard. This is hard. You have to be here. But we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this.
Thank you, Board Member Gold. I think it ought to be pointed out that this meeting itself is a way of communicating to all the community, particularly the part of our community that's most concerned about, what happens to this school. It's letting them know that there is a way for them to get together and say, together, we're going to do what's necessary to submit a proposal for operating a charter school in a very competent way, academically and financially. We're letting the word go out. We're welcoming it. We're encouraging it. And you're going through the steps right now for our benefit, for the community's benefit, to listen. This is how you do it. So thank you. Please proceed.
To piggyback on what Reverend Golden just said, I conduct on a yearly basis applicant orientation meetings. I could conduct one earlier with any interested parties, and what I do in that orientation process is I sit down with interested applicants and I go over the application, I go over the rubric, I go over the review process, I go over the timeline. And so all those aspects of the application process are reviewed. They're given copies of the application, copies of the rubric, timeline, everything. And so that could be, I could have that done earlier for that group to provide all the resources and information that they need in case that there's any individual or group of people that would like to submit an application.
Thank you, sir.
The typical timeline for the application process is February 1st, which is by state statute. All districts, February 1st is a deadline for applications on or before February 1st. And the recommendation by the review committee must be made 90 days after receipt of that application. And then by state statute, the district has 70 days first to propose a contract and then 40 days for a final contract to be approved. So that's the basic timeline, but in the case of Lincoln Memorial Academy, we would want to adjust the timeline so that we could facilitate the opening of the school for the 2020-2021 school year. So accepting an application, for example, by December 20th, so that would give the review committee time to start reviewing the application. Again, we want to follow state statute and provide a recommendation within 90 days, and then again, following state statute, the 70 days for up to approve the final contract. So that would be an adjusted timeline that I believe would be important to look at and to consider. And I keep forgetting to change slides, I apologize. So there's the adjusted timeline.
Given the adjusted timeline, when would you be available to meet with anybody that wanted to participate?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
I already have my items prepared for my orientation meeting. It's already scheduled for later in October, but I can have a second one earlier.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Now, these are just some things I wanted to end with, so that first of all, the district is called the sponsor. We're also called sometimes the authorizer, and so these are just some things to keep in mind as we look at applications and we look at possible applicants. Is that we need to make sure that we're setting high standards for approving the applications. That's very important, and that we only approve applications that clearly that demonstrate high probability of academic success, sound fiscal management, and effective governance and oversight. And then some core principles, and these are all from state statute, include maintaining high expectations for student achievement and school performance. An important part is the autonomy, making sure that charter schools are independent and that we're promoting creativity when we're looking at their application. And also, last but not least, protecting students and public interests.
Any more questions? Board Member Hopes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wanted to make sure, I don't like the word district managed charter schools, but and I'm glad I don't live in Miami-Dade County anymore. I actually sold my house last week, 2.5 years later. So I'm glad to be out of there. But the reason why I want to highlight this point is it provides an opportunity for a community group who on day one may not be able to provide all the human resource components, background checks, may not be able to provide a nutrition program and meals, and they can choose. So you could have a group that could come together by December with all of the right intentions, a governing board of community leaders and educators and parents who may not be able in this short period of time to put together all of the components of operating a very complicated educational institution, could get those services for a limited period of time in partnership with the district. So it opens up greater opportunities for some of these interested community members to form a group. They would not have to provide the details of how they're going to do payroll. They could say, we intend to purchase, payroll services, or we intend to purchase, the meal services from the district for the first school year or the first 6 months or whatever. So I don't want that to be lost on the community, that if you're interested in operating Lincoln Memorial Academy, you don't necessarily on day one have to be able to provide all these services. The state provides a pathway for those services to be obtained through the district's administrative apparatus.
We do that currently with food service, for example, and transportation.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Board Member Kennedy.
Thanks. And Frank, thank you for the presentation. It is very helpful. I learned a couple things that I thought I knew, but I found out I was wrong, so thank you for that. I do want to just kind of think out just for a second about where we go if LMA prevails on the appeal when it comes out in the next week, without getting into the specifics, but what do we do from that point forward? So if they prevail, obviously the school comes back into their control. Could we then, at that point, provide those services? I'm assuming we can, I just want to make sure. We could step in to help the school with all the HR, IT. Potentially, we could do that. Correct?
Okay, Superintendent Saunders.
There would have to be an amended contract, because right now, as their contract states, those services are not available. So it would have to be a new negotiated contract, because with those services, there's a fee and a cost, et cetera, et cetera. So could we do it? The board could approve that, but as their contract states right now, those services are not provided.
So new contract, that helps. And then, Dr. Hopes, you just said this a few minutes ago, that the District Court of Appeals process, if we were not to prevail and we chose to appeal, that could potentially be a long process. So that would mean that LMA is back in control of the school pending the DCA decision, correct?
That's my understanding,
On their own.
yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. I thought so, I just wanted to make sure. Because, I think either way, we've got a school, no matter who prevails, we've got a school that needs support and needs our help. And, Reverend Golden, I think, is, we are trying to we want the community to be involved in this process, but ultimately, this is our process.
Ultimately, this is a what process?
This is ours. This is our approval. We can't hand it off. We can certainly consult the community, but we can't put the decision in their hands. And I'm just bringing that up because that's a tough, because you're right, on the night of the 23rd, we were very clear to say we want this to remain a charter, a community-based charter in the tradition of Lincoln Memorial. But we've got to be creative to figure out how to do that.
Chair?
Board Member Golden.
Okay. There is much speaking about what is little felt. Now, Lincoln didn't just get to be Lincoln when it became a charter school. It was Lincoln when this same school board decided to stop it from being a high school because they were trying to overcome segregation. It was the same school that has been deprived of the funding that it needed and all of the things that they needed to be a good public school. The person that came in here and asked, give us one more shot to do it as a charter school, came in here and did not get the job done and forced this board to make a decision that was highly unpopular, but very, very necessary. Because if it had not been made, from what I'm given to understand, the school would already be closed, period. Because it is not able to meet its financial obligations. And so I'm not gonna back away from the hard job of restoring it to where it should have been all of last year. Now, make no mistake about it, I'm not a fan of charter schools at all, but I am a fan of this school not going out of business. For it to not go out of business, they don't need our help. We need to help them. And if we aren't clear about that, if we aren't willing to give these people the same opportunity that we gave Mr. Jones when he came up in here and said, let's have the Manatee School of Arts, if we're not willing to give the same opportunity to people that came out there and did Rowlett Elementary and came back and did Rowlett, if we are not willing to trust them, then we are automatically building in seeds for their destruction. This is hard work. You can't just come up in here and make a speech there and run a charter school. You want to run a charter school, you got to meet with you starting tomorrow and every day that's necessary to run it. And don't come up in here talking about, well, y'all stopped us, or y'all didn't give us enough money, or you didn't give us enough people, or you didn't give. I don't want to be scapegoated anymore. That's not fair to all of the other schools and all of the other charter schools. You want a school, run it. Then come to me and say, well, we went to see Dr. What's your name? We went to see Dr. Yeah, and he didn't talk to us, or he was rude to us, or then we got something to deal with. But in terms of us helping them, we helped them on the 23rd of July. We helped that school on the 23rd of July. And I think they know it because when they were here, then it was a whole different story about the principal and the curriculum and the leadership and all that kind of carrying on. I don't hear none of that anymore. But I still hear the same thing. We trying to close the school. That's not fair. That's not right.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think we're all through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. There being no, we're going to adjourn this workshop. Thank you, Dr. Pacino.
Thank you. Nice job.